A lifelong prince becomes king, but is he wearing the role well? Charles is in charge, and a year into his reign, one expert says the crown suits him just fine. It's hard to believe it's already been a year since the heartbreaking death of Queen Elizabeth II, especially since so much has happened in the royal family in these brief 12 months. Between the release of Prince Harry's memoir Spare, the jewel-studded coronation of King Charles III, and drama surrounding Prince Andrew's fall from grace, it's been a wild year for royal watchers. That said, no one in the royal family has experienced more change in the wake of the Queen's passing than Charles himself. King Charles waited longer than any previous British monarch to take the throne, making him the oldest person to ever ascend. As such, he lived the majority of his life as Prince Charles, a role that he grew ever more comfortable embodying as the years passed. In fact, that was his identity for 73 years, and while he had been groomed and prepared all his life to become king, changing jobs at 73 is bound to be a challenge, no matter who you are. We spoke with Jess Ponsa III, body language expert, communication coach, and co-author of the book Awesome: 7 Keys to Unlocking the Speaker Within, to learn how King Charles's shifting body language can give us insight into how he has changed since his mother's death and his own ascension to the role of king. Charles served as the Prince of Wales for many decades, and by the time Queen Elizabeth reached the milestone of her Platinum Jubilee, it was a role that came as easily as breathing to him, according to Ponsa. After watching the speech that Charles gave in honor of his mother at the Platinum Jubilee celebration, Ponsa told us, "Not only is Prince Charles charming and witty, he is regal during this speech. You can tell he is someone who has spent his life in the public's eye and was raised for events like this."
Your Majesty, Mummy.
Ponsa went on to say that his speech was well prepared and apt, and that his delivery was perfectly on point. His gestures, specifically his meticulous upward hand movements, show confidence. He is certain and comfortable. He is in his element, owns his role as the son of England, and wears it with ease. He is loyal not only to his mother but to the country and the part his family plays in it. He appropriately showed up exactly as he needed to in this moment. Queen Elizabeth passed away at Balmoral Castle in Scotland on September 8, 2022. Shortly thereafter, the responsibility of addressing Britain fell to Charles, who gave a live televised speech while seated beside a framed portrait of his mother. He had the unique challenge of speaking both as a grieving son and also as the newly minted head of the nation. So how did he do? Ponsa told us it was one of his shining moments. He was both appropriately royal and deeply personal. Occasionally, when he spoke of the Queen's impact, his eyes would close briefly. This is a sign of emotion and respect for both the mom he loved and the figurehead he revered. His cadence was assuring and warm. He was the leader we needed him to be in this moment, and a clear sign of the leader he would become.
Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations.
Ponsa went so far as to call this speech Charles's strongest appearance to date, because through it, the audience could, quote, begin to see in real time the transformation of prince into king. Ponsa added, whereas before he was merely a figure in the royal family, he was now the leader of it. This was a turning point moment for King Charles and will go down as one of his most unifying moments, a moment when we needed someone to comfort and bring us together just as he did. Just weeks before his coronation on May 6, 2023, Charles once again addressed the nation, but this time he did so quite differently from the address given in the wake of his mother's passing. This speech was his official Commonwealth Day speech, and as Ponsa pointed out to us, Charles, who was the king-in-waiting at the time, had 2 different agendas to follow. The first, Ponsa said, was to honor his mom, which he had already done a beautiful job of in the speech he gave after her passing. The second agenda, as Ponsa put it, was to get down to business. In other words, it was time to discuss what needs to get done, as the leader of the United Kingdom. Ponsa felt that Charles handled both agendas appropriately, but, quote, overall it was a formal moment that will be noted as unremarkable in years to come. Unlike the emotion that was palpable in his body language and in his voice in his previous address, this speech was written simply, Ponsa explained. Now, don't get me wrong, he was appropriate and quite articulate in his address. The moment, however, did not have the weight of previous addresses. This was more a business-as-usual address.
Let ours be a commonwealth that not only stands together, but strives together.
This isn't necessarily a bad thing, however. It demonstrated that Charles, even in the wake of so much personal turmoil, was able to focus clearly on the task at hand, leading the country. In August 2023, Charles and his family returned to Balmoral. The family's vacation coincided very closely with the first anniversary of the Queen's death, and the weight of the moment was not lost on the King. During the official welcome, during which Scottish troops in traditional dress greeted the King with a demonstration and music, Charles appeared comfortable with a barely-there gentle smile. Ponsa told us that Charles's demeanor at this event demonstrated that in spite of all the changes, he is still himself. Charles is consistently understated. This might be in part because we have seen him as a prince for so many years, and not as king. He's not someone who physically has a strong, noble stature. However, when he engages others with his warm smile, you see everyone around him light up, and it will be this more personal touch that will make his reign as king stand out. In fact, Ponsa thinks that the king's uncharacteristic warmth, his casual and personable nature, and his ability to appear dignified yet also very human might just be his greatest strengths. He explained, "When we hear him speak and when we see him engage others, we experience him at his best. That is the king we need to see. So maybe, unlike others who led the royal family in the past, this is where we can see him shine the most." So, while Charles does maintain a great deal of the warmth and social personality he had as Prince of Wales, Ponsa feels we should make no mistake that the king has evolved from a prince into a world-class leader. His strength is when he speaks and addresses people. Put him on stage and the performer within takes over. He's likable and warm. If he had a piece of advice for King Charles, Ponsa said he would suggest to him that he allow that warmth to burn through.